Walking along Via Tortona many times over the last few years, I had noticed Esco Bistro Mediterraneo, and I'd also taken a look at their menu, found it appealing, and thought I should have dinner there sometime. On my most recent trip to Milan, I decided this is where I wanted to go on my first evening. 2 tasting menus were offered, one with 6 courses and one with 8 courses. Naturally, I ordered the latter. As is usually the case, each course was to be a surprise, with the chef deciding what would make a good sequence. I inquired meekly whether a primo I had seen on the menu might be incorporated, assuming the chef agreed. But more on that later. The head waiter quickly brought me a glass of spumante morus, mostly Chardonnay with a bit of Pinot Nero, from grapes grown on the outlying slopes of Monte Baldo in the Trentino south of Rovereto. A plate of amuse-bouche appeared. 5 different sorts of bread, with various toppings and fillings ranging from prosciutto to caprino, tomatoes, an eggplant puree, and fig halves. For a moment I was mildly alarmed about how substantial these were. Was my appetite going to be too severely curtailed before the 8 mystery courses? I ate them all anyway. Course number 1 was a room-temperature soup of late summer vegetables, stracciatella, and a roll of toasted flatbread enclosing mortadella. Olive powder and wild fennel tips were scattered on top. The soup had such an umami taste that, given the color, I suspected it contained chickpeas. But no, the waiter assured me those were not present. Cucumbers, eggplant, and roast peppers were the vegetables. We continued with another antipasto, coarsely knife-cut raw beef with watercress, 24-month aged parmesan, and confit cherry tomatoes. I mustn't omit to mention that the beef was fassone, the prized Piemontese breed. We moved on to the third antipasto, Mediterranean amberjack fillets, just seared in olive oil, so they were still super juicy and tender. They were served on a lightly sweet and sour compote of trombetta zucchini and green onions. Trombetta zucchini, in case you haven't come across them, are ultra-long, thin zucchini with a rounded ending, hence the trumpet in their name. Usually they're pale to medium green. The flesh is firm, sweet, and very flavorful. Meanwhile, I was enjoying a glass of Sassaia from Angiolino Maule, a winemaker situated just a bit to the southwest of Vicenza. The Sassaia was 85% Garganega, a native grape of the Veneto, with 15% Trebbiano. The head waiter made a point of saying it was a natural wine, despite some trepidation due to very mixed drinking experiences with natural wines. It was indeed a delight. And Garganega is a variety we never encounter in Vienna. The first primo arrived. By this point, I wasn't actually sure how many courses were still coming. Quite a few, I thought. And I'd noticed that the portion sizes seemed very generous in light of the number of total dishes. I asked the young server whether the chef might be persuaded to slightly reduce the size of the following courses, as I wanted to retain optimum appetite and enjoyment for what was yet to come. In the meantime, I abandoned thoughts of pacing myself and dived into the plate of plin. A famous Piemontese classic, the pasta was of course homemade and filled with ground beef and vegetables, then tossed in a pan with lots of butter. The sage leaves, you see, were also an essential taste factor. This may sound simple, but made this well, it was a memorable primo. There was a second primo, and this was the dish about which I had discreetly asked whether it could be included in the 8 courses. The fact that I felt the first sensation of approaching fullness was something which I had to overlook or deny. What were these shapes? Conchiglie, made from burnt grain, and cocoa, with both factors together accounting for the dark brown color and smoky flavor. These were served with chunks of raw salsiccia di bra and vegetables, in a reduction of vegetable broth, with grated ricotta salata on top. I was very glad I'd requested this dish, assuming it hadn't already been foreseen by the chef. The maître, although keeping the chef's menu sequence a secret, had said there would be a meat dish when he brought out and opened the red wine in advance to let it breathe. The red was a Barbaresco from the Adriano family, a small producer just south of Asti. This wine, one of 3 Barbarescos they make, was the Sanadaive. I started on it before course 6, and it had the miraculous effect of re-stimulating my somewhat flagging appetite. Dish 6 was another antipasto as a secondo, and the portion size was just right for me. Grilled octopus on tender baby greens, with figs and weak yogurt flavored with brewer's yeast. The brewer's yeast in the yogurt was an idea I really liked, and I was happy to see more figs after the ones at the beginning with the prosciutto. It was time for the meat. In course 2, we'd had raw fassone beef. Now we had a sottofiletto of fassone, along with sautéed frigitelli peppers and tropea onion marmalade. Translating meat cuts is always a tricky proposition. Exactly which part of the fillet this was, I wouldn't be able to say. As to frigitelli, they're the sweet medium green peppers of central and southern Italy. I had made sure I kept enough of the barbaresco to enjoy with the beef. Dessert was up next. Before it was served, the head waiter brought me its wine pairing, a Misicaseu Passito from L'Armangia, a winery south of Asti in Piemonte, made mostly from Moscato. The chef, Francesco Passalacqua, is from Piemonte, hence the references to so many Piemontese dishes, either in their classic versions or in variations. The Piemonte focus applied to dessert, too. Bunette, my absolute favorite spoon dessert, here with figs for the 3rd time on the menu, this time caramelized with almonds and thyme, that herb being a surprising but very effective addition. I had been very hungry when I arrived at Esco Bistro Mediterraneo. Now I was very full, but very happy, and ready for bed. I slept like a log.